fresh water?
Yes, that's fresh.
That's
I
fresh.
just gave it to her.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That's good. We think that. I have two people thinking about it.
morning. Good morning. I'm Carmela Southers, your worship associate today, and I use the pronouns she, her. In person or online, we join as one community. Since our services are live streamed and recorded, feel free to move to the last 4 rows to be in our camera-free zone. Or stay where you are, up to you. Here we strive to nurture learning, inspire spiritual insights, create compassionate relationships, and lovingly transform our community and the world. If you're joining us as a visitor or guest, we're glad you're here. Please leave contact information at the welcome table or online at the worship portal. This will allow our ministers and staff to get in contact with you in the week to come. In addition, everyone is invited to fill out a card about a personal significant joy or concern that you would like shared during the service. You may pick up and leave your card at the Joys and Concerns table just right outside those doors and that way. On our worship portal on the website. And please join us after the service for coffee and conversation. It's so nice to have you worshiping with us today. So you light a chalice as a symbol of the light of reason, the warmth of community, and the flame of hope. Wherever you are, please join me in reading our chalice lighting words. In this time when rhetoric blusters about and words are used as weapons, may we remember we are a people of resilience. We have faced uncertainty before. We have weathered storms. We have been consumed by flames. We have risen like the phoenix from the ashes, and we will rise again. We are very pleased to have Barbara Gustafson with us today. Barbara is a dedicated advocate for mental and brain health. We all need that. I do. She specializes in stress management and burnout prevention for mental health workers and community leaders. She's the author of Permission to be Bold and serves as the head facilitator for Aman Clinic's certification program for clinicians, coaches, and educators. Currently, she's pursuing her master's in psychology at Arizona State University. You can learn more about her work at discovernextstep, all one word, .com. Welcome.
Can you hear me okay? Wonderful. Thank you so much for allowing me to come today. Thank you, Carmela and Gloria and Cynthia, who invited me. I have been transparently excited and nervous. I'm excited just because I know some of you and I see some non-familiar faces, and I've heard this is such an amazing space in our community. I am nervous because I'm coming out of my own season of limbo. And when asked for topics to speak on, I picked 2 that were super easy, but one that was nagging me the most. And that was navigating limbo. And that was the one I was hoping they would not pick. But as you know, life does not work out that way sometimes. So if you can go to the second slide, please. And the next. Thank you. So I jumped on a very valid platform to take a survey. That is, of course, Facebook. And I had my own words that I used when I was feeling in the state of wilderness. There were so many different words that I used for being in a transition, but I wanted to hear what other people thought of it. And these are words that people posted, and it created quite a buzz. And I was really fascinated and interested in some of the words that you would say. And the ones that I resonated, the first one was quicksand, just being in a place of stuck, being in a state of holding. Decision fatigue came up. One interesting, floating in space. And if you remember the show Land of the Lost, that's the first image that I thought of. And then another one that drew my eyes was LMBO. And if you really look at that word, yeah, that almost looks like it spells limbo. So for my limbo, the part that's uncomfortable for me are the things that we don't talk about with other people. You know, usually when we're in a transition, when we're waiting for a job or waiting for things to change, or maybe waiting for those health tests to come in, or when you're caregiving, there's things that we do to keep going, put a smile on our face, keep being strong. But this other side of the coin, things that we don't often say to people, things that we don't want to admit to others or even ourselves. And that's the kind of conversation I wanted to open up today, just a little bit, just to crack in the door. But for us to realize we are still a community when we're going through limbo, even though it can be one of the loneliest times. So if you can go to the next slide. So I'm coming from the context of recently getting out of a 15-year caregiving journey with my father, and we were both in our limbo. He suffered a lifetime with Huntington's disease. If you're not familiar with that, it's like having dementia, ALS, and Parkinson's at the same time. I lost my sister to Huntington's 2 years ago. So our family has been in limbo. And some of the unspoken descriptors of limbo that I felt: guilt for feeling like I wanted to do more, guilt for losing my temper, guilt for not giving myself permission to grow and thrive at certain times. I also experienced anger and resentment towards my father, because at times I felt like all I was doing was caring for myself. And yet I felt like I also had purpose outside of caregiving. So all these uncomfortable, it was like a complex issue, but if you break it apart, there's all these clusters of emotion. And so when I look at limbo, even though I'm out of that caregiving journey, I'm still finding my way out of it. Just because after 15 years, it becomes part of your life. It becomes a pattern. And I'm learning to know what it is living life without caregiving in this season. So I wanted to really come for the approach that I don't have all the answers, yet I do have an understanding of what it's like. And often I've realized that limbo and grief are intertwined. Even if it's a loss of a friendship, loss of a job, loss of what was, loss of what wasn't. It can be complicated. And so for today, I really want to go through and share some of the lessons that limbo, or limbo land, as I fondly refer to it now, has taught me. And one of the first things that limbo has taught me, if you can go to the next slide, is that waiting is not a waste. If you've been in a long transition, or if you've just been in the state of not knowing, being still can feel like a waste, because we naturally want to get things done. You know, we want to keep moving. But I've learned that waiting is an opportunity to really take a look around and see what you can change, maybe something that has not gone well in your life. But waiting for me, I learned to savor. And that's a word I've kind of added on to gratitude, love, joy. But savoring for me is like the big red gum commercial. Does anybody remember the big red gum? And there was a phrase in that is last a little longer, love a little longer, hold hands a little longer. That feeling, and it's the extension and prolonging of gratitude just a little bit longer. And that gives so much more depth to gratitude than I'm grateful for this, I'm grateful. It just gives it more dimension. Waiting also bought me some time because I had to make some really difficult decisions, and decision fatigue was definitely one of mine, especially when you're responsible for someone else. And I also learned that you can be in limbo and grow at the same time, yet it looks completely different. The growth is more uncomfortable, it's unsettling, and it does a number of your brain. It makes you think that you're not doing what you're supposed to, not in the right space. You start to really question yourself. And sometimes it's getting further along in that limbo or looking back that you realize that the waiting was a lesson. The next lesson for me, it's an opportunity to let go. And for me, for whatever reason, physical things were part of my life of letting go. My dad was also a hoarder, just like on TV. 7 storage units, a house filled to the brim. His wife was also a hoarder. And it took years to let go. So that was one of my focuses of letting go during limbo. I didn't like it. There was no one else in the family. My husband, incredibly supportive. But for me, the physical letting go allowed me to look in my life where I had hoarded, I call them the ants, the automatic negative thoughts, and just the burden I had placed in my life throughout my years. And it was, for me, looking back, it was a beautiful way to really let some things go. One of those was perfectionism. Anybody here recovering perfectionist? That was a big one for me, but it was, for me, a gracious and graceful way to let go. Letting go of judgment, self-judgment, judgment on others. It was a place of surrender for me. One of the ways that I began to create the space of letting go was once a month, I took a self-retreat. I've been doing that for 8 years. Just got back from a mini hybrid sabbatical from Colorado, but just creating the space to let go was essential for me. And then the third, next slide please, is really understanding the role that my nervous system played in limbo and with stress. And I'm so grateful that I had the opportunity to really learn under Dr. Amen and really learn about what's happening in my brain when I'm going through certain changes in my life, in particular grief, but limbo at the same time. And I will tell you, everyone geeks out on something. This is something I can geek out on day, but I'm not going to do that to you today. But if you see the next slide, 2 things I'm going to show you. A healthy nervous system is kind of like a heartbeat. It has a healthy ebb and flow. It's meant to go up and down, help us through changes and trials in our life. What happens often is our nervous system, our brain can literally get stuck in overdrive. They call it a state of hyperarousal. And this often is when sometimes we can go to unhealthy means to calm it. This is a time where our brain wants to be calm because it's stuck in this overdrive. Prayer, meditation, mindfulness, things that we know are brain calming exercises. Even 2-minute meditation. There's lots of great breathing exercises. One in particular that has studies showing over time it can reduce inflammation is the 4-7-8 breath. It's basically just breathe in for 4 seconds, hold it for 7, breathe out slowly for 8. There's lots of great breathing exercises. That's one that I could remember every day. Hypnosis, calming supplements. And then on the next slide, you'll see, and these are images of SPEC imaging at Amen clinics, single photon emission computed tomography, really long word. Basically what it looks at that's different than other brain scan is activity and blood flow in 3 areas where there's too much activity, not enough, and just right. So this is an image where there's not enough activity and it's needing boosting. And this is when you get stuck at the bottom, your nervous system becomes disconnected and you want to boost it. So exercise, movement, doesn't have to be vigorous exercise. It could be a 5-minute walk 2 or 3 times a day. Strong connections. Community is vital for our health. It's also vital for our brain health too. A new hobby can also stimulate our brain. Knowing your purpose activates the creative center parts of your brain. So there's easy things that we can do that are non-complicated, a lot of them even free that you can boost or calm your brain. The next slide was really interesting. There's a poem that I'd like to read an excerpt for you by Douglas Malloch, and it's in your reading. It says, "Good timber does not grow with ease. The stronger the wind, the stronger trees. The further sky, the greater length. The more the storm, the more the strength. By sun and cold, by rain and snow, in trees and men, good timbers grow." I came across this poem in 2017 when I was finishing up with my book. A mentor shared this poem with me and it stuck with me. I had to really break it down because at the time my brain was like, no way, I should not have to go through this storm to become strong. That's not fair. Yet it was a perfect time for me to start getting curious. And I came across this study, actually a building in University of Arizona called Biosphere 2. And basically what it was 3 acres of a controlled environment where they grew trees, swamps, different environments in the world in just 3 acres. And it's kind of like a giant bubble. You can jump online and see it. And when they first started growing the trees grew up beautifully, like really fast in this controlled environment. And it's in the middle of a desert. But what they found was 3 or 4 years later, when they got to maturity, the trees started falling over, just blunk, blunk, blunk. And they were perplexed. They're like, why in the world would these trees fall over? After further studying, it turns out there was no rain, there was no wind, there was no storm, and trees and wood, they need stress wood. They need to be able to have a resilience as they're aging to withstand to these storms. That brought it full circle to me. And I realized it's really about the resilience that I'm growing. And if I choose to look at it that way, I'm going to come out stronger, not because of this limbo, but not despite of it, because of the limbo. And so I had to really start to reframe how I looked at things. And with the buzz and the hot topic and the real thing happening in the world is trauma. And there's a beautiful body of research coming out on post-traumatic growth. And it's all about the resilience that we build because of the trauma. And the last lesson that I would like to share is that you can absolutely have fun, laughter during limbo. It doesn't feel like fun when you're going through it, but you can still have fun. I tend to really hone in. I get serious about my work, sometimes a little too serious about life. I've learned to have more fun, but it takes stretching, it takes growing. And fun for me, I would say, has been the best distractor from whatever's going on. Whatever is going on. So my husband and I, one of the things that we've done over the years, if we watch comedy at night. I like the drama, the adventure, the thrillers, but my brain loves laughter at the end of the day. I sleep better. So I want to leave you with this word by Joseph Campbell in the last slide is, we must let go of the life that we've planned so as to accept the one that is waiting for us. And I want to ask you, silently ask yourself, what is it that I need to let go so that I can be open to what's ahead of me? Because what I found is transformation doesn't happen without the transition, without the limbo. So I hope this brings an encouragement. If you're going through limbo, you're not going crazy. And I'm here to tell you, without any judgment at all, be okay with where you are. Be okay with thinking what you're thinking. It doesn't mean that you're going to permanently stay there. So thank you again so much. I'm happy and honored to take questions, your thoughts, your insights and wisdom. And Carmela is going to walk around with the microphone.
How do you deal with worrying about what's happening in this country?
So you may not like my answer. You may not like my answer, but I'm going to tell you how I deal with it. I did just get back from a sabbatical. I knew very little what was happening in the country. Very little until 2 days ago. And I lived. I survived. My husband updated me. Because I have an overactive brain, I tend to get stuck on certain thoughts and certain things out there that I think about over and over again. And becoming self-aware of my brain type, there is such a thing, I have been able to train my brain, but I have set some really clear boundaries with myself. I don't watch the news. I don't look at the news. I have a couple of sources I go to keep, as formed as I need to. I feel my mission on earth is really to support myself, number one, so that I can give what I need to and live in my purpose. So some people may think that's keeping my head in the sand, avoiding and not knowing, and that's okay. I'm okay with that. But I have learned it's a process. It wasn't easy to train my brain to do so. But questioning my thoughts has probably been my most productive way, challenging my thoughts. Because here's the thing with our brains. Every time we have a sad thought, mad thought, angry thought, it immediately changes our hand temperature to colder, which happens in our blood flow, in our brain. It constricts us, so we can't think as clearly. And the opposite is true. Thankfully, every time we have a happy thought, glad thought, hopeful thought, within seconds, our brain releases chemicals that make us feel good. So think about a time where you felt amazing and then someone said something or you saw something, and in a second, you just felt this empty feeling on the pit of your stomach. So a lot of things are happening in our brain and body, and our thoughts are directing our brain and body what to do. So questioning my thoughts, is that thought true? Byron Katie wrote a book, Loving What Is. She has a wonderful framework. Is that thought true? Is it absolutely 100% true? Who am I when I think the thought that the world's a scary place? I feel scared. I want to isolate myself. I feel disconnected. Who am I without the thought that this world's a scary place? I'm bolder. I want to try new things. I'm more hopeful. I want to connect. And then creating a turnaround statement. For some people, it's an affirmation. For others, it could be a more accurate thought at the time. I know no matter what happens, I'm going to be okay. If not physically, I'm okay, outside of the physical realm. I'm okay spiritually. I'm okay emotionally. So I don't know if that helps or gives you some idea. No, I would be happy to talk to you afterwards just to get a little bit more context if that would help. But thank you for the question. Any others?
I wanted to clarify something. You made mention of the Amman Clinic, and that's as far as the man who was very much involved in the workings of the neuroscience of the brain in California, as well as Washington, D.C., correct?
Yes.
Right. Could you talk a little bit more about what this is about? Because I find it fascinating.
Yeah, so Dr. Amen, it's interesting because if you think about all the specialists in our healthcare field, we have cardiologists, we have liver specialists, we have so many bone specialists. Psychiatry is still the only specialist that they don't look at the organ that they treat unless there's a known head injury, a known head trauma. So in psychiatry, they're still treating many mental health diagnoses the same way they did when Abraham Lincoln was diagnosed with depression. So Dr. Amen he's a self-proclaimed maverick. He's gone against the grain of a lot of how psychiatry is approached today. And so he does look at the organ that he treats through SPECT imaging. It's something back in 2017, because what runs in my family and some of the symptoms I was having, I was able to have the opportunity to have my brain scanned too. And for the first time, I realized why I was having panic attacks, why I had an overactive brain, mild PTSD, and 2 mild head injuries. And it really helped me target my rehabilitation. So for me personally, it was very helpful. And not everybody's able to get their brain scanned, but there's free assessments out there that you can get online to help. It's not a diagnosis, but it's a tool to help you target which key brain system might be underactive or overactive. Yes, another question.
I'm coming.
You're waiting for the mic.
Just coming around the corner.
I have a comment and a question. I'll do the comment first. One thing that I kind of started doing when those of you who know me know that I'm going through a really weird transition right now with my daughter and everything. But one of the things I started to do was ask myself, is anything going to change in the next 10 minutes? And if the answer was no, if I couldn't do anything in the next 10 minutes, then I didn't think about it for 10 minutes. And then I'd check in with myself again and again. And that's something that I do to try and get through the limbo, right? My question is about, you mentioned the hand cold thing.
Yes.
Where can I learn more about that?
I can give you a resource after.
Yeah.
If you go to amenclinics.com, there's a blog and a search thing, and you
Okay.
can type in just about anything and type in hand warming techniques.
Perfect. Thank
Yeah.
you.
And the wonderful thing is we have such a gift of our imagination, and there's been, studies showing through visualization, even imagining our hands getting warmer. And there's even studies with Buddhist monks, thinking, just the heat, you can really change your body and hand temperature through intense focus. And I really love the exercise, the question that you ask yourself, because your brain and your body are always listening to anything you tell it, to anything you're feeling, and it wants you to achieve that goal, even if it's not helpful for you. So you have a question that is very helpful that you can self-direct yourself. So I love that. I'll probably be using that too. All right. I see another hand raised in the back and then in the third row. And another familiar face.
Yes, I put two and two together. Hello. I would just appreciate it if you would comment on the concept the body remembers, because I think it acknowledges that some people have a really tough road to hoe.
Yes.
Oh, it's The Body Knows the Score? Is that?
Yeah, that's a wonderful book. That's a wonderful book. So I will share my experience on The Body Remembers. I think it was 5 years ago that I started visiting a specific chiropractor in Charlottesville, just because I had some stability due to one of my injuries. And I remember the very first treatment, the first day, I just experienced eruptions of crying that I was not expecting at all. It was the weirdest thing. And I thought something was wrong. Like, why am I crying so much? And so I contacted the chiropractor, and with the help of a mentor, they explained to me that the spinal cord holds a lot of trauma. You can have a lot of trauma in the body and the brain, but also the spinal cord. And think of your spinal cord as a big circuit breaker. We have this thing. And so the resetting was kind of like shutting off the circuit breaker and turning it back on. That's the best way I know how to describe. What can happen for some people when they're ready to process trauma is there would be this backward spiraling that goes, I don't know how it all works, but for me, it was like everything went back to early trauma, childhood trauma. And pains that I hadn't felt, just weird, odd pains came up over a period of a few hours. But it was like my body was remembering, going back to the source of that memory, that hurt, that pain, that conflict. And then it spiraled back. It worked its way out, and I was okay. I was like, cool, this is great. So my thoughts, I'm not an expert in body trauma specifically and how our cells hold memories, but for me, I don't have to do much digging for things to come up. And the lesson for me was I don't have to force to go way back. What's happening now is enough. I can go down a little layer, but in my life, it's been an unfolding. Maybe I will, but I don't think I'll ever arrive to perfection right here and processing everything. But the beauty of it is God, universe knows what we can handle. And I don't have the answers on why that is, but I know in my experience that when I've thought things were too hard or I couldn't take it anymore, it was actually what I needed, and I could, with the right support, go through this. So I don't know if that helps. Okay, great. And I think there was yes, you have the mic already.
I get off track because each next question and topic gets me thinking in another direction. But it's really good. But what was coming up for me was how in times of limbo and quiet, where with caregiving, for example, you're in a situation where you are on pause, but you've got your technology or your phone, so you have a tendency to be occupied, and that can take you in the wrong path. And I was thinking about and with the news, your suggestion about not watching the news is really good, and just reading about it, because that gives you more of your brain more of a time, was I was thinking of to just really process, and to calm down and give it a chance. When you were describing the answer, I was thinking, if we can calm down, breathe, give your brain a chance to relax and say it's okay, then you can maybe think of also solutions better. If we're on hyperdrive, it's harder to come up with a solution. So that can be helpful too. My problem sometimes is I teach children's yoga, so I teach them a lot of the breathing. I give them the example of getting lost in King's Dominion. Let's say you were getting ready to go with your parents and they said, if you get lost, do this, this, and this. But if you're scared, your brain, like everything, you get to the fight or flight or freeze and you maybe run off or take off. But if you just stop, take a breath, and then your brain can kind of remember I say you access your wisdom. And then the answer comes, oh yeah, I'm supposed to stay here or do this or that. My issue is I use technology for getting a lot of really good ideas, on my phone or on my computer, and then something will come up and take me off of it, like in a different direction. So I guess my question is techniques for being able to use technology but not getting carried away from it. Already some of the things I've learned are just reading, not watching news, but reading about it. You don't hear the emotion, and then people can't really manipulate you that way as much when you're reading. And you've got your sources, and it slows you down. You're not getting it as fast, but you can give your chance time to think. But this is really nice here. We don't have our technology. We're talking and looking at each other. It's so much better. But I guess that's the question, resources for that. How do you use your technology but not getting carried away?
That's a great question, and as you're talking, you're already naturally coming up for answers because everyone is individual, bio-individual, so what may work for you may not work for the person sitting next to you. So really find something that works. And for me, what has worked, because I also have ADD, is when I'm wanting to make a change or build a habit like that breathing exercise, I set my alarm on my phone. Same time every day. I also put it in my calendar as a to-do. I don't have a to-do list anymore. I'm a post-it queen, but it has led me wrong. So I have everything that I'm going to do that day in my calendar. And also knowing that when we're in a state where, lots happening and emotions are like getting lost at King's Dominion, our limbic system is going to be so overactive that it takes our prefrontal cortex offline. It literally lowers activity. And so we can't make a decision very well, think clearly, connect. We're just in, we're full-blown survival, and we need to get to a place where we're self-regulating. And so breathing, like you mentioned, helps us to self-regulate. And there's studies now that's showing that we can co-regulate. Like communities like this, we can regulate together. Our nervous systems can have a positive impact on the, nervous systems around here. Exciting project that I was working on last year and the year before was over at Hazelwild with horses. We were running a program for first responders, veterans, and healthcare workers impacted by PTSD. And the interesting thing about horses is they can pick up on our nervous systems. So we can look fine, but they'll call out our BS, they'll act out and stuff. But over the course of 6 weeks, watching these men and women learn to self-regulate, but also co-regulate with each other and also with the horses, gives them awareness about how they can take that and implement it into their lives. So it's different for every person, but building that awareness really, that phrase, know thyself, know your brain too, know how it works, know when it, steers you the wrong way. I named my brain. Her name is Lucy. She gets me into all kinds of trouble. So just even changing the conversations you have with yourself, because that judgment can just turn on just like that. But when we bring fun, lightheartedness, we can talk about heavy and difficult topics a little bit easier. But great question. Thank you.
Well, I just want to thank you for sharing your personal story about limbo and dealing with the extended caretaking that you did. I think it touched a lot of us who've been in similar spaces. Many of us are in those spaces even now. So I think that's very important, and appreciate you having the courage and kindness and generosity to take us into that space to explore that. So I wanted to start off with that. I also wanted to say, I think while we do need all things in moderation, I think we have an obligation as citizens on the planet, an existential obligation to know what's going on in the world. And retreat, while necessary at times for mental health, can also be a privilege, and I think we need to be mindful of that, class privilege that many people have to get to retreat. When there's so many things that need us to be mindful of and address. Third is, I've done some reading, not enough, but I do know that there is quite a lot of criticism out there about Dr. Amen, whatever his name is, and his methodology, challenges to his interpretations and uses of imaging, the supplements that he sells that are supposed to address, issues that people are struggling with. A lot of very credible researchers and psychologists, and saying that there's not an empirical basis or not a significant enough one for what he is positing. And I feel remiss if I didn't ask you if you wanted to address that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for asking the questions. There's a lot of skeptics, and I think you'll find when anyone does go against the grain of how things are done, you're gonna have pushback. Even when we get out of our comfort zone, even if we're not at that level, we're gonna get pushback. And I tell people, definitely do your research. It's not for everyone. For me, I was a high skeptic. I still am a skeptic. For me, I had tried everything I could think of to get answers, and I didn't get answers. When I was 19, I was in a horseback riding accident, broke my back, hit my head, but I was never scanned because I wasn't knocked unconscious. I went back to school, ringing in my ears, panic attacks, disconnected, depression, and anxiety. And it wasn't until about actually 2016 when I saw the chiropractor and noticed that there was a lack of blood flow in this side. And once they got that straightened and other things, it was so much better. And my personal story was, I was reading Change Your Brain, Change Your Life by Dr. Amen, and the first time I had symptoms that explained what was going on. I had a concern about the scan. Like other things you get, there's things that they inject in you. There's a radioisotope that they put in there, little tiny amounts. I was very nervous about that. Rare instances, there can be an allergy. Thankfully, that didn't happen, and I was able to get the answers that I need. And one of the other things I was concerned about is why aren't there other people using this scan? Why does he seem to be the one using this? And then I found out Mayo Clinic uses scans, SPECT scans. There's SPECT using for kidneys, for livers, for other organs. There's not many people, there's a few people using it for brain scans, but what he's been able to do, over 250,000 scans now, he's been able to find patterns in the brain. Like, there's no two brains that are alike, just like your fingerprint, but he's been able to find patterns. He's been able to subtype ADD, 7 different types, which helps because it explains why some people do really well on Ritalin and other medication, but it also explains why for some people it makes their brain worse. And it's because they're not treating that location, that part of the brain that's responsible for different things. There's temporal lobe ADD, which people start to have more mood disorders as related to distraction. There's classic, there's impulsive, there's anxious ADD, there's sensitive types, and there's a combination. I have over 3 different combinations. So that may not solidly answer your question, but I advise people always do the research. I never recommend doing something you don't feel in your heart and your gut about. But if you've tried everything else and you're looking for answers, it might be a place of resource. And there's so many things that you can do without getting a scan. So many things. And Amen Clinics they don't treat every brain disorder, but they treat a number of brain disorders. So I feel like I did the best for my decision, but I also know for other people, it might not be the direction they want to go. So, thank you.
On enjoying the limbo. My life has kind of felt like limbo for like 3 years now. Going through decision fatigue with my living situation, and my mother's health is now deteriorating, so I believe I will be going into a caregiving role, but she's in a different state. Finally getting a degree, but my current job might be ending. It's just a lot going on, and I was kind of going crazy for years. Always voices in the back of my mind, like, trying to control things and put things into places, trying to make everything work for me and figure it all out right now. And these past couple months through meditation and journaling, I have been trying to realize that I don't need to have it all figured out right now. I'm not wasting time, and I can enjoy where I'm at, because it's only going to be like this for a certain amount of time, and then I'll be on to the next thing. And I don't need the next thing to happen right now. And that's been really, really good for me, because I feel like I can be more present, because I'm not always worried about, oh, what do I need to do to make this happen? What do I need to put into place to make everything work out? So I just wanted to say thank you for sharing this. I was really excited when I saw this topic, and that's been one thing I've been working on.
Thank you for sharing that. That's to be able to get to that place is a victory, and sometimes the littlest victories are the biggest victories that we. Sometimes a victory like that is a miracle that we need in our life. And I, a couple years ago, I was all excited because I started my master's, and things got really bumpy. And with my dad, it was a 10-month journey in hospice. So I put a pause on school. I didn't want to. I think I threw a tantrum or two about it. But I realized in hindsight that was what I needed. And I'm excited to hit the unpause button in a couple of months. But you're right. You can, look at yourself and your situation and realize, I'm okay. I'm going to be okay. This is really hard. And Sheryl Sandberg's book, I can't remember, I think it's called Leaning In. Anyway, she talks about the 3 P's, and for me, one of the P's is permanence. My brain catastrophizes and saying it's always going to be this way, and realizing that is not permanent. That's something that I've added to the story or to the narrative of that. But that's a good reframe for you at the time. Thank you for sharing. All right. Thank you all.
Wow. Well, thank you very much. Good heavens. I have a lot to think about. So, shifting gears, offering. When you give to the UUFF, you help us nurture learning, inspire spiritual insights, and lovingly transform our community and the world. Greeters will be coming around with baskets, or you may donate via text message. This week is a Share the Plate Sunday, so a portion of the offering will be donated to the Fredericksburg Area Food Bank. They do amazing work. We'll be covering the written joys and concerns after the offering, But while the offertory music is playing, please feel free to place a pebble in the bowl of water for any joys or concerns you're holding privately in your heart.
My life flows on in endless song above us lamentation. I hear the real, the far-off hymn that hails a new creation. Through all the tumult and the strife, I hear the music ring. It sounds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? What though the tempest round me roars, I know the truth it liveth. What though the darkness round me close, songs in the night it giveth. No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to that rock I'm clinging. Since love prevails in heaven and earth, how can I keep from singing? When tyrants tremble as they hear the bells of freedom ringing, when friends rejoice both far and near, how can I keep from singing? To prison cell and dungeon vile, our thoughts to them are winging. When friends by shame are undefiled, how can I keep from singing? No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to that rock I'm clinging. Since love prevails in heaven and earth, how can I keep from singing?
May all that has been shared and freely given here help us grow in generosity and caring for the world of which we are a part. It is said that a joy shared in a beloved community is doubled, and that a concern shared in a beloved community is halved. We don't have any written joys and concerns today, but there are a lot of pebbles in the water. So let's take a few moments to be present with all the joys and concerns that we hold in our hearts. Our closing reading is Prayer for Living Intention by Joseph M. Cherry. If we have any hope of transforming the world and changing ourselves, we must be bold enough to step into our discomfort, brave enough to be clumsy there, and loving enough to forgive ourselves and others. May we, as a people of faith, be granted the strength to be so bold, so brave, and so loving. Please join me in reading together our chalice extinguishing words. We extinguish this chalice but not the light of love and service. May it be a catalyst for spiritual growth and social justice as we carry it outside these walls to the world we live in until we are together again. Go in peace, serve the world, return again in love.